I am going to say the same sentence 3 times. Listen carefully because the meaning will change. You finished already? You finished already. You finished already? Same sentence with the same words, but 3 completely different meanings. That is intonation, doing the work through where you put the stress. And that is why so many learners of English might think, I use correct grammar, but sometimes people misunderstand me. Today, we are addressing that. We are looking at that because in English, intonation is everything. Intonation often is meaning. First, you might have heard this word and not know what it means. What is intonation? Intonation, if you like, is the music of English. It's the rise and fall of a voice as it speaks. And this is the crucial thing. Intonation isn't optional. It isn't there for decoration. It is critical. In English, intonation carries so much weight. It conveys attitude, emotion, sometimes intention, arguably sometimes even more than the words themselves. Just based on intonation, you can either sound confident or uncertain. You can sound polite or irritated, warm or distant, without changing a single word. Today, I am going to walk you through the basics of intonation and obviously explain to you why intonation is important. And I have created a free PDF outlining the content of today's lesson. Link is in the description below, as well as a free PDF for 20 expressions we use in English all the time. Also, if you are keen to fix your intonation and learn how we link sounds in English and how to have a natural rhythm, I have created a Booster Fluency mini course. Again, details are in the description below. And with that said, let's go over the fundamental rules of intonation. Let's start simple. A statement versus a question. You're coming. With a falling tone, a falling intonation, this is a statement. It's decided. You're coming. You're coming. With a rising tone, on the other hand, it's a question. You're coming. So the first one is telling, you're coming. The second one is checking. You're coming. Here is what gets a lot of learners confused. If everything is said in English with a rising intonation at the end of each sentence, English speakers might hear hesitation, doubt, a lack of certainty, a lack of confidence, even if that is not what you mean. A quick rule to help you with this, generally speaking, falling intonation communicates completion and certainty. Rising intonation communicates a question, checking something, politeness, or doubt. Think about a list when you go to the shops. I'm going to buy some egg, milk, bread, and some cheese. High rising intonation there indicated the list wasn't finished. The falling intonation and some cheese indicated the list was finished. I'm going to buy some milk, some bread, some eggs, and some cheese. Completion. An important side note, there are some accents in English that naturally have what we call high rising intonation that go up at the end of the sentence. You might have heard of the Californian Valley girl who kind of speaks like this. Another classic one is the Australian accent. I'll do my best to show it. Now, some people get confused because they go up often at the end of every sentence, and that can make other people think that they are always asking a question. That was exaggerated, and not all Australians speak that way, but that was just to give you an idea that some accents naturally have high rising intonation. Generally though, that rule applies. Falling intonation, certainty, completion. Rising intonation, uncertainty, doubt, or politeness. Now, let's look at what I was communicating in the introduction to this video, the stress inside a sentence and how that changes the meaning. Let's take this sentence. I didn't say she was late. I didn't say she was late. Listen to how the meaning changes depending on where I put the stress. I didn't say she was late. That implies I didn't say it. Someone else said she was late. I didn't say she was late. That is implying denial. That's not what I said. That's not what I said. I didn't say she was late. I didn't say she was late. This time, where the stress falls, I didn't say she was the one who was late. I said someone else was late. Finally, I didn't say she was late. That implies I didn't say she was late, but she perhaps wasn't on time. Maybe she was early, but she didn't arrive precisely on time. I didn't say she was late, or depending on the context, it could mean she wasn't late, but she was unprepared. I didn't say she was late, I said she was unprepared. But as you can see, that is the same sentence, but the different ways I said that meant it had a completely different meaning. Listen again. I didn't say she was late. 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 I'm now overexposed to this sentence, but you get the gist. That was said in 4 different ways, the same words, but it had 4 different meanings. And native speakers rely on this constantly, especially in fast conversations. Often where we put the stress is where there is the meaning. And now let's talk about the attitude and emotion that we put into words. Let's take this sentence, that's fine. If it is said warmly, that means it is genuinely fine. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. Warmly, genuinely fine. If it is said flat or clipped, it means that's not fine at all. That's fine, that's fine, that's fine. That's fine. And this is why some learners might say, people think I'm being rude, but I'm not. Because honestly, it is rarely the words. It is the tone and the intonation. And tone and intonation in this instance overlap. This bit is really important. And as I said, it can vary based on which version of English you have within the different regions, within the different countries where English is the mother tongue. Generally though, intonation is cultural. Different languages use intonation in different ways. So in some languages, speech is more level. It doesn't rise and fall the way English does. Emotion can be conveyed more through words than through tone. And in some, rising and falling intonation is much more subtle. So if English isn't your native language and your intonation sounds flat or unusual to English speakers, that doesn't mean you are doing anything wrong. However, it might mean that you are using the intonation system of your own language when you speak English. And really, when you are speaking English, you should try and use the intonation system of English. This is perhaps why some speakers sound more serious when they don't mean to. Some might sound uncertain when they are just trying to be polite. Others might sound annoyed when they're just trying to be efficient. You may feel you are speaking perfectly politely, but sometimes English speakers are hearing something else. And it's that mismatch that can cause misunderstanding. And it has nothing to do with the words themselves, it's all to do with how they are spoken. But this is why intonation can be one of the most difficult things to master, but also one of the most powerful things to master. For example, it is better to have natural sounding intonation, I think, than perfect pronunciation on every word. Once you adjust your intonation and implement that intonation system that we use in native English, that's when people might say, oh, your English sounds so natural, even though your vocabulary hasn't changed at all. A very common issue I hear is this. Someone might have perfect grammar, but flat intonation and equal stress on every word. English is what we call a stress-timed language. Some words are strong, but other words are weak, and it depends on what we are trying to convey. I want to go to the shops. I want to go to the shops. I want and shops really stand out. The rest of the syllables blur, they become weak. I want to go to the shops. So if every syllable and word sounds equally important, native speakers will struggle to hear what matters in the sentence, what you're trying to convey, or what your attitude is, what your feeling is. And so let's address something important. How can you practice your intonation? How can you make it sound better? Firstly, you can copy real speech. And I don't mean flat news readers, for example, like the BBC News. I mean short and natural conversations. Shadowing. Shadowing is very effective. I have a couple of shadowing videos on this channel, and I plan to do another one in a few weeks' time that focuses on this, on intonation and how we change meaning by what we say. So copying real speech, shadowing, is the first thing. The second thing you need to do is to exaggerate first. If it feels too much, you're probably doing it right. As some of you know, I also speak Italian, and when I was struggling to do an accent in that, someone said to me, you need to almost sound like you are taking the mick, like you are mocking the Italian accent when you are speaking. So I went from speaking saying, io sono Hannah e sono inglese, io sono Hannah, sono inglese. Per esempio, ho vissuto a Firenze per un anno. And although my accent and intonation are not perfect, by exaggerating the way that I thought Italians sounded, that did actually make it sound much better than my original flat English intonation in Italian. So, when you are shadowing, exaggerate the intonation. As I said, if it feels like you are over-exaggerating, like you're doing it too much, you're probably doing it right. You can always reel it back. The difficulty is, often people feel self-conscious and they don't want to do that. They don't want to exaggerate in the way I just did, because it's a bit embarrassing. But equally, if you exaggerate more, that's going to do a lot for your intonation. My third tip is to record yourself. I've said this so many times on this channel, but that is one of the best ways you can improve. Record yourself, and if it sounds flat to you, it will definitely sound flat to others. Record yourself, listen to it, and think, how does that compare to the native English that I hear? And my final tip, focus on the meaning, not on the rules, not on the grammar. Ask, what am I really trying to say here? And then let your voice do the work. Let your voice put the stress on what is important. Focus on the meaning, not just the rules. And there you have it. Sometimes if people misunderstand your English, it might not be your grammar or your vocabulary, it might be your intonation, because often intonation is overlooked. People focus on the grammar and the rules and the vocabulary, and they are important, but then they don't think about the way they are saying things. So intonation can be overlooked, and that's a critical mistake. Intonation is just as important, if not more important, than some of those other things. And once you start hearing it, once you start hearing those intonation patterns that we've discussed, you'll hear them everywhere. Let me know in the comments if you want more videos on stress, intonation, and the rhythm of English. As I said, I have now a course available that goes into this in a lot more detail. Details are in the description below. Pronunciation and Fluency Booster mini course. It's not too expensive, but it will make a difference with your speaking. Have a look if that is of interest to you. You might enjoy this video where I go into more detail about how we link sounds in English, or this video where I explain how to understand fast English. Don't forget your free PDFs. Have a wonderful rest of your day. As always, it's a pleasure. See you in the next one.